Welcome to Tech Unscripted. We're here for season 2, and this season will focus on how real organizations are navigating through this very complex AI era. I'm joined here today with 2 experts and panelists. I'll allow you to introduce yourselves.
Mark Sibering, Expert Director at Devoteam.
Maikel Van Der Roest, Senior Network Engineer at the Dutch Air Traffic Control.
Great. And I'm Denise. I'm with Cisco. So let's go ahead and dive right in here. We know that AI is transforming every industry, and we know it is also putting unprecedented pressure on our systems, our power systems, our cooling systems, and all we can hear about is more and more continued growth of data center. So the nice to have of sustainability and what we do about power and cooling are now coming into the sort of urgency of how we address building for this AI era. Today, I'd like to kind of revisit these conversations from real life, what you're seeing and experiencing in your organizations. We're going to do a lightning round to just kind of kick us off and get us started here. If I can ask for 1-sentence answers to a couple of these prompts, it'll give us a good way to get started. The first one is AI in the data centers, opportunity or threat to sustainability?
I think, if I may, at this point in time, it's a threat.
Okay.
I agree. For sustainability, it's a threat.
Yep. I think you're right. It's particularly a big reason why we're here having these conversations. All right, second one. What is more constrained today? Power, cooling, or skill sets?
In the Netherlands, it's definitely power. And skill sets is a good second.
Okay.
I would answer all of the above.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Would you lean more towards building new or optimize what we already have?
Optimize what we have.
I would build new.
Okay. Thank you for honoring the 1 sentence. Now let's dive in because I want to hear a little bit more about these perspectives. We all know that AI workloads are increasingly adding power-intensive pressures and even regulations to organizations. Can you talk a little bit about what your specific organizations are facing when it comes to energy consumption challenges?
Want to take them first? Or?
Government regulations and mainly also power constraints at specific parts in the Netherlands, mainly the airport itself. Like we're actually required to reduce our power overall payload. To use less, well, we actually need to compute more.
Yeah, I know it was just a couple of years ago, it felt like the whole world was moving towards publishing goals around net zero, right? And now we hardly see that now. We're just talking about what can we possibly do to keep up with the demand?
Yeah, and the problem here in the Netherlands is as well that the grid is not capable of providing enough power to the data centers. And from what I see at customers is that it is kind of a challenge when it arrives at the data center to get it to the racks. And then, well, we started with 3 kilowatts per rack, then it became 30. Now, last year it was 115. This morning I heard people talking about a megawatt per rack. And if you have 100 racks in a room, then you have 100 megawatts of trying to cool that away. And I did a presentation for CNCF about a year and a half ago. And I made a comparison that where I live, that's an area in the Netherlands called Ypenburg. 35,000 people live there, and they consume about 10 megawatts electrically and 10 megawatts of heat. And now we have a single room in a data center that will consume tenfold. So that's the size of a big city here in the country.
Yeah. Well, I think we're seeing those trade-offs. There are these primary spots for data center all over the world, oftentimes where grid connection is already available. I read somewhere that specifically here in Amsterdam, well, around the world they're talking about data centers needing to go up in 12 to 24 months. Getting a grid connect, do you have any idea how long that takes for a new grid connect? I was fascinated with this.
In the Netherlands?
Yeah.
I think infinity, because the grid is
normally it's about, from what I've heard around the world, it's about 10 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Right now in the Netherlands, it's close to 30 years because of all the legal stuff that needs to be taken care of. And yeah, what's your business case going to be in 10 years?
Right.
I mean, it's very interesting if you can get anything done at all.
It's very, very interesting, especially when you consider how much more global everyone is, not just with data centers. You look at air traffic control and you look at airports alone and new airports that are going up. That's not a data center, but it consumes quite a bit of power and you need a lot of compute. So even just the idea of like what is a data center and the infrastructure that goes into it, there's a lot of new projects happening all over the world. Yeah, that's great. So let's take that a step further. So we know there's a lot of constraints on power. We know it takes a lot more in planning. What are your organizations doing to increase kind of that efficiency and looking at some of that optimization? Because that trade-off between should it be data center or should it be homes that get power? What are you seeing?
If I look at what the papers here in the Netherlands are saying, it's like they can't build 10,000s of homes because the data centers actually are first in line to get the power. So that is a society question that we somehow have to answer. If I look at my employer, then we're trying to understand how to really use AI in a smart way so that it's more economically
Productive.
Yeah, productive and using less power, and also understanding what AI is, how you can use it so you can use it in a smart way.
Yeah.
So that what you have can be more efficient. If I look at what my customers are doing, a lot of them are still experimenting, but they are wondering like, okay, but if it takes off, how can I scale it within my organization? Because if it really works, where do I get the power from?
Right. Now, it's a little harder to experiment in your line of work. What are you seeing?
What we more try to do is reduce the power footprint with what we currently have. Like we always cooled data centers to a certain level, and if you raise the temperature, you need less power to cool it.
Yeah.
Oh, you have more room again.
Yeah, pushing the limits on.
Pushing the limits on sustainability, reusing the heat, putting solar panels on the roof.
Yeah.
Like all the nice little European instituted.
So you mentioned that, let's go back to the question of you differed a little bit on retrofitting existing data centers, and you opted for new ones. Maikel, can you maybe get us started on why you think retrofitting data centers is a better option right now?
It's because of the unique challenges you have in the aviation world. You need to have most all of the systems in-house, like cloud-connected systems are quite still a no-no in our world.
Yeah.
So then you have like no other option to either rebuild it or.
And how would you rebuild? What things might you do differently, or what are you looking at?
From just a globally cooled, like really old setup data center to like heat and cooling streets.
What sort of cooling architectures have you seen, played with, interested in?
So we played with, heat or cold, or like the data center streets, which were either like
hot, cold aisles.
The hot, cold aisles or the cold, hot aisles, and that's where we played with.
Okay, but all air cooled still.
All air cooled still.
Okay, and how about you?
Well,
why new?
Why new? In my experiences, I've been in IT since '93, and every project that I've seen that tried to retrofit an old thing meant doing almost impossible, how do you call that?
Also constraints.
Yeah, you have to work around all kinds of constraints that were in the old setup.
Sure,
that
like raised floors can't handle the weight of some of these new racks.
Like it's the weight, it is the height, it is the way you get power to the racks. And if you try to retrofit it in an old environment, you have to solve all those old problems too. And if you design from scratch, you can avoid a lot of those complexities from day one. So in a lot of cases, it is probably cheaper to just break down the building, start anew, I mean, remember when Cisco introduced the Cisco 12K and they had to retrofit all their data centers with steel support beams to actually have the routers in the data center.
Yeah.
Well, if you have to take those kinds of measures
sure.
in your building, then why at all do that? Why not just start again?
So it's interesting. I heard a recent stat, Gartner published a report very recently that 40% of all data center projects are going to be stalled because of power constraints, right?
Yep.
It's not overly surprising, but it's nice to see, there's some research and some data behind it. And when you think about those power constraints and you think about the opportunity to start from scratch with, I wouldn't say unlimited funds, but the type of money that we're starting to see go this way, it's hard to wrap your head around it, right? The sheer amount of dollars. I think here in the EU alone, there's like hundreds of billions of dollars that are being earmarked specifically for AI infrastructure and power. Some of my question, I have to you when you're considering this, because it does seem to differ by industry, by use case. What are some of the themes that you see kind of forming with the build out of AI, right? So whether it's building new or retrofitting, what are some of these themes? I know there's sometimes people talk about smaller or on-prem, versus in the cloud, or distributed power, on-site generation. What are some things that you might be seeing in your organizations or with your customers?
I think they're trying to do it mainly smarter. In homes, you have like all these heat pump solutions, and you can have like ground-based heat pumps. Like you can also use that in data centers, of course.
Yeah.
But it only works if you build a new data center.
Right.
But then what we also do in the Netherlands is like the wind powers and the solar farms, so that the power just comes from more sustainable sources to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what I have a lot of discussions with customers about that, and what I find interesting is that what I hear a lot is that is the question, where is it going? In the prep, we talked about, for example, the fact that NVIDIA bought Grok between Christmas and New Year, and nobody actually, it was really quiet. They just bought the knowledge and the people, and the company is still there. And they did that because NVIDIA feels that the way the hardware needs to be built for inferencing is completely different from training as it is currently being done.
Yeah.
Companies investing in AI read that too, and they're like, but wait, I am going to invest in AI, but what am I actually going to buy? Because does the new hardware use as much energy as the old hardware? You have Apple focusing on on-device AI.
Mm-hmm.
On-device AI, if you want to do that properly, should be a lot more energy efficient than doing it in the data center. So the question is, we're now focusing so much on AI in the data center and centrally, but is that a sustainable future, or will that change in the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, I think it's interesting. A lot of times when we say AI data centers, that's synonymous with the web scalers, the hyperscalers, and a lot of the training models, right? These are the very large numbers and these megawatt racks. And I say this in air quotes because I have yet to see somebody raise their hand and say, I would like to build a megawatt rack, and I know the people that are going to do it, and here is one. Other than prototypes with a sign that says megawatt rack, I still have yet to see it because of the power constraints, right? So when I think about the different types of data center in the future, you might actually be, with the amount of racks that go into an IDF closet, that could be a small data center if you count the number of GPUs or CPUs that are being put in these things. But I think you bring up a really great point, which is there are a lot of people who say this, like AI for sustainability for AI. Like how do we do the right strategy and design for these data centers? But these data centers have a wide variety of types, right? And the architecture needed them based on those use cases. So when you talk about inferencing in some of those use cases versus setting up a training model for entire airports or countries, those are two wildly different use cases. And I think the architectures behind them sort of necessitate this very large portfolio of new technologies, new architectures, and how these things come together. One question I have for you is how are you measuring what is good or what is responsible building when it comes to AI data centers or AI architectures?
Measuring being responsible. Very interesting question. Can you measure being responsible? Or is that the amount of annoyance that you read in the newspaper about decisions that are made? I doubt if there is a measurable, tangible OKR that you can connect to being responsible.
Well, I know Germany is trying to capture and limit the amount of heat being dispersed, right? So how much percentage of heat from data centers is being captured and responsibly used? There's just the tokenization economy of how much useful power is going to, at the end of the day, AI data centers, the large hyperscaler ones, it's a business. So how much of that power is actually going to useful compute versus wasted energy going to cooling and power distribution and loss. So these are some of the operational metrics. I'm curious. Today, PUE for data center on its power utilization effectiveness, there's a whole bunch of holes in what it's measuring and how it's measured. So I know that's quite controversial, but something is better than nothing. What are you seeing in your space, Maikel?
Well, question one is what's the useful compute you start to begin with? You do see with AI your expectations as a human from the output the AI delivers mismatches with what technology still can or cannot do at this moment.
Are there some examples of how you might be able to apply AI to sustainability use cases for better automation or better outcomes over time? Like if I heard you were playing a little bit and building some tools and models with AI. Are there some examples that you can share that you think AI can actually help with more sustainable deployments and building?
I think that when you now design stuff and you don't use AI, you miss out on a lot of knowledge. In history, what you've seen is people always try to use as much knowledge as you can, and the AI models have all the knowledge. Yeah. So let's hope that the use of AI in the design process will help reduce the number of obvious mistakes, between air quotes, so that people actually make smarter designs because they use AI. And given the power constraints that we have, I think you will see people start moving towards, okay, but if these constraints are real, what can we do to work within the constraints? Right. And that they will ask, I do that too. I mean, I ask Claude Code, like, okay, so I am thinking about this. What's known in literature? What would you say about the reasoning? And you get feedback that is pretty good if you look at deep research from Google. The research that you get out of that is mind-boggling. Yeah. And it helps you to rethink what you're doing. So will AI help? I think, yeah.
I think AI mainly adds to where we as humans like to cut corners. Because AI just can have a better total picture than what you as human can fathom on your own.
You mean you can cut corners better?
I can do it better, yes. That's for sure.
Well, I think for a period of time, they were in universities. They were putting prompt engineering in as a way of critical thinking, right? Because now we have to train the next generation on these tools to be not just how to use them, but how to be smart and ethical and still apply critical thinking, right? I think that's part of the.
How do you train the younger generation?
Yeah. I graduated in AI back in 2002, if I remember it correctly. And then the use case was, can you automate a pilot out of a out of a plane,
Right.
which was the use case you try
Wow.
to make the AI of that time actually work.
Yeah.
And if you now compare it to what we now do with AI, like we can make a whole bunch of fun things.
Yeah.
But like if you look at the use case, okay, take a pilot out of a plane, make it fly. And what we now do with AI, it's a little bit like, did we dream more back in the first
Interesting.
AI bubble than we do now?
Yeah, and if you see what OpenClaw or Clawbot at the moment
Cloudbot.
is doing, that's
Yeah, that's
crazy.
fun.
Yeah. Actually, out of curiosity, and you can just give directional numbers, you don't have to be too specific. How much of planes are kind of the automated driving?
None.
None.
Oh. It's done by humans because humans have more brain capacity to deal with it smarter. And it has to do with capacity and just like like a plane movement equals up to a monetary sum of money, and we humans can provide a better, smarter way of doing it. And lots of people try to automate air traffic control, but
Yeah.
none
None. Yeah.
cannot to the part where a human can.
So we still
less-
win.
Yeah, humans still win.
Good. Good. That's
Biology wins over silicon at the moment.
Yeah, it has to do with the human mind and abilities to see certain patterns which AI is just not capable of figuring it out just yet. It can
But
be
more information, I would imagine, at the pilot's fingertips.
and also if you like, so that's also like a more ethical question. If a human screws up with planes, they are like liable, and they also can or they can correct it. It also was research I done also back then in 2002. But what happens if AI screws up and planes actually collide in the air? Then what?
Right.
And how can you ethically explain, yeah, well, it made an error?
Well, we're dealing with that with automobiles and trucks, right? At a smaller scales for sure, but those are still
Yeah, but also with
evaluating.
trucks and with cars, they do
Correct.
crash.
Yes, right. That's right.
Well, the autopilots in my car find it very interesting that in the middle of the highway they're saying, oh, yeah, by the way, you can go 30 kilometers an hour here, and it just hit the brakes. When I got my new car, I was like,
What?
this is not really safe.
It's early days. That's really interesting. What do you see as we kind of go forward? Are you most excited about or concerned about? Right? Maybe answer on both sides. Like something that you're really excited about that AI is bringing, and then on the other side, what are you most concerned about?
I think AI is going to cut development time for new things like in 10-fold. What am I most concerned about? I have 3 kids. I learned my trade through failing. And like any network engineer, I killed a few organizations working because I just made the old typo. Yeah, it's bad when it happens, but you learn.
You learn, yeah.
But what do you do when your kids don't get the opportunity to fail? How will they learn? AI will try to prevent all those obvious failures, but will they be able to take the next step? Who will be able to follow in our footsteps if we don't have the opportunity for them to learn what's coming next?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that is that's a concern that I have. The
And I'm
rest
sure-
we will solve.
Right, and I'm sure reconciling that on a day-to-day basis, going to work and seeing the pace of change and how much is coming, and then going home and raising this next generation. Yeah, I can absolutely.
I think the technology stuff we
empathize with that.
will fix that. I mean, we've always fixed it, and we will.
Yeah. How about you, Maikel?
I think AI will make things you dream of a possibility. And I truly believe we all get to that point where you can dream it and it will make it. What my worries are the ethical implications of that all. Because we as humans here think nice things and useful things, but there's also humans around us who do not do that.
Yeah.
And how will we AI fend against that? Like, You also had like 3D printing where that show up, it was really nice, and then somebody printed a gun, and now what?
Yeah.
And, well, imagine AI going into that direction also.
Well, they tried that already. I mean, they put two AI agents talk to each other, and within 5 minutes they invented a language that we can follow. I mean,
Yeah, true, but you can also see it with Grok, for instance, what it could do before NVIDIA bought it, and what it can do now. That also applied to quite strict and called ethological guidelines, and I think those guardrails we can use as humans a little bit more.
Yeah, that's fair. When you hear different leaders and some of these talks and other things that you've done, what would you say is the biggest misconception when we talk about sustainable AI?
I think the most common misconception is that AI will solve everything, including the sustainability problem, and that they can stop thinking.
Yeah, the critical thinking piece on one end of the spectrum is something a lot of experts, especially on the academic and the regulatory side, are trying to figure out what can they do to circumvent that.
Yeah.
Maikel, how about you?
I don't think AI is sustainable to begin with, or not in the current form and the way it is now. And I think it will get there, which summarizes what I'm trying to tell about AI. It's like, it will get there, we're just not there yet, and it's mixing and matching like your own expectations of the products.
Yeah, when you step back and think, it's really only 2 years and change into the big boom of AI, right? I mean, yes, AI has been around for a long time, but the point in which ChatGPT scaled to 10 million users in a couple of weeks, that was only 2 years ago. True. 2 years ago and change. And so you could argue we're at the very, very early stages of a lot of this.
And I mean, you work within Cisco for a long time. So what did it do within Cisco?
Yeah, it's that balance. I think that first and foremost for an organization at our size and scale is how do you put the right guardrails in for everyone to be able to test and use and experiment in a way that is safe, ethical, and behind the right security walls of the company, right? But we are seeing more and more deployments and encouragement of AI in everything that we do. I find it to be a very exciting tool. And that learning curve is, honestly, this is one of the most exciting times to be in tech. It's been decades, and I've grown up in it. I've seen it for generations. This is a wildly exciting time. But how do you circumvent and try to put the guardrails on earlier, knowing what we know? Because I still think knowledge is power. Those basic measurements of all the sustainability things we talked about before, that's no longer nice to have. We have the tools to do things more responsibly with the right innovation and technology. Now the question is speed and scale. I think it's really important for companies around the world, especially global companies, to share that knowledge and to bring and build ecosystems that we can work together. Knowing that there's going to be a lot of things that have to be different than the legacy, right? And I think that's just acknowledging that what we have today is not enough. Something needs to be new and different.
Yeah.
So we opened with a lightning round. Let's go ahead and close off with a lightning round again. I've got 2 for you. In 5 years, what will matter more in data centers? Efficiency, transparency, or resilience?
I'll go with resilience.
I think transparency.
If there is one word, I'm going to do this 2 lightning rounds. One word about this AI era that has new to your vocabulary that you really like, and one word that you would ban from AI conversations if you could. I'll start to give you a second. I love the word AI jitter. I think it's just a funny word, and but it actually is very telling in terms of what we have to plan for and how different it is. And if I could ban a word, ironically, I would take sustainability out of the conversation because to me it comes down to being responsible and ethical. And yes, that word sustainable, but I feel like it has just gotten it's been so highly politicized unnecessarily. And so I would try to take that controversy out of it.
Yeah, there's one word in the English language that I really like that I miss in all the discussions about AI, and that's serendipity. Because a lot of people want to have everything planned, but especially the unplanned encounters, I mean, we're at Cisco Live, you meet people, they make remarks, and it makes you think. If we go towards AI, then in the way that people envision it, the serendipity disappears. And I think the power is in the unplanned things.
Yeah, I love that word.
Yeah.
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 So, words taken out, I don't know. I would like to have the word serendipity in.
Okay, I like it. I will plan to use that throughout the day.
I agree. Well, I'm an engineer, so I love MCP. That's just the newest and like really fun to play with. And if I can take one thing out, it's like, hey, Grok, can you make this picture and ...
That's great.
Like,
For some of our audience members who may not know what MCP is, can you enlighten?
I need to think a little bit about that in English. Like how you can explain to that in a nutshell. Would you like to try?
Oh yeah, I've been playing around with Claude Code lately, and Anthropic is of course one of the inventors of MCP.
Yeah.
And the idea was that you inject the complete API description into your prompt so that your AI engine will know how to retrieve data from a system.
Yep.
And Anthropic also recalled MCP because it eats tokens like crazy. I mean, the big APIs are so big that you lose out a week of tokens in 10 minutes.
Yikes, okay.
So now they are talking about skills, which is like small snippets of the API call.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the conversation today. I think it goes without saying AI is here to stay, but how we navigate it and how we do it more responsibly and ethically all of us will play an important role for that. So thank you for being here today, Maikel and Mark, and I look forward to having the next conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in to Season 2 of Tech Unscripted. Maikel, Mark, great conversation today. Please stay tuned for more episodes.